Friends and followers, I'll start with a disclaimer this time. I'm not a doctor and nothing that I say in this video is actually medical advice. I am just following the WHO guideline, which says that just about any face covering that you will have is a good idea basically. And with that, I will quickly get started with the project and stick around towards the end of the video to have a little more detailed discussions on the types and the usage of masks that you have available these days. Okay guys, these are the list of raw material that you need for this project. The most important thing that you need is a shopping bag made out of non-woven polypropylene. You want them to be of a light color so that if your mask gets dirty, you'll get to see it quickly. And you want the thickness to be that of t-shirt fabric. And the way you know that you have the right fabric is that if you tear off a small corner, you will see these fibers sticking out. And that's how you know you have the right fabric. You will also need a material to form the core of your mask. So this one will actually form the first and the last layers of your mask. I'm going for a 3-layered mask. And the core of the mask will be this extremely fine muslin. Again, it's made out of cotton in a light color. I would imagine you can also make this out of a synthetic material. I think that will be slightly better because it will help you keep the mask dry. But yes, you'll also need this to form the core of your mask. The other important raw material that you need is a strip of metal. It's about 10 centimeters long. And this will form the nasal strip that seals the mask to your nose. I got mine by cutting open this can. I would imagine you can use just about any material which kind of bends, like a piece of copper wire. That will work fine just as well. So with these 3 materials, you can quickly make a 3-layered mask which you can use daily. So let us first start by cutting up the correct size of the panels from the non-woven polypropylene which I talked about. The first panel that you need is one that measures 6 inch in this direction and 6.5 inch in this direction, which is this. And now I will cut along the sides. By the way, I'm using a quilting ruler here. You can use just about any ruler that you have. Okay, you keep that aside. The next panel that you need again is one that is 6 inches in this direction and then 8 inches in the vertical direction. And then again I cut along the edges. Okay, so these 2 layers essentially make the first and the outer and the inner layer of the mask. You keep both of them aside. Time to cut out the fabric for the core of the mask. That's the cotton fabric which I had chosen, and this one will be 6 inches by 6.5 inch. Awesome. So now you have the 3 layers of your mask ready. This is how they stack up. So the larger one, so that's the one with the width of 8 inches, is the outermost layer, followed by the core, which is the cotton fabric in my case, followed by another layer of non-woven polypropylene. So that's basically the 3 layers of your mask. You'll also need to use the same cotton that I showed you earlier to cut strips of fabric which are approximately 42 inches long. That's how long you need them to be so that you can tie the mask to the back of your head. And the width I am keeping approximately 1.5 inch. And what you do is you simply mark along the 1.5 inch width line. And by the way, you need to do it twice because you need 2 straps to secure the mask properly. That's it. Now you cut along the lines to create your 2 strips of fabric. Okay, awesome. So now I have got these 2 strips of fabric. Now, once you have these strips ready, what you need to do is take out your iron, and you basically need to fold them twice. So this is fold 1, like so, and then you fold it again on this side, and then you fold it in the middle. Tailors would like to call these as bias tapes, and that's basically what you have to make for this entire strip of material. Be patient, it's going to take a little time, but it's not really hard to do. You take it nice and slow. You first fold one of the edges. Now that one of the edges have been folded over, I'm going to do the same for the other edge. Okay, so now that I have both edges folded over, I'm going to fold it one more time in the middle, like so. And that basically constitutes your bias tape. If you have bias tape, you can also use that. If you have one of those bias tape makers, you can use that as well. It really doesn't matter. But yeah, this is what you have to achieve for the entire length of the strip that you have cut, and for both the strips you have cut. Okay, so that's done. Okay, the last thing that you need to do is cut out a strip of metal from this piece. And make sure it's approximately 1/2 centimeter thick. I think that's a good width. And basically you can use any heavy scissor to cut this. Ideally you would require a tin snip of some sort, but here I am using just an old tailor's scissor and it seems to work quite well. There we go. Right, and this will form the strip which will lay above your nose, and make sure you trim the edges so that there are no sharp corners. Cool. Before we actually start stitching this thing, we will use an iron to make out some folds first of all. That will help us in the stitching process. So yeah, I'm arranging the same way as I showed you before. The larger piece is at the bottom, followed by the cotton layer, and then another piece of this non-woven polypropylene, and use a very low temperature in your iron, and be very careful because this polypropylene melts real easy. So first what I'm doing is folding over the edge about half an inch, and once you do that, you fold it over a second time. Basically I am rolling a hem at the two corners of the mask. Again, take it nice and easy. You don't want to melt this thing, and believe me, it melts really easy. Now that you're done on one side, flip it over and do the same on this side of the mask. And with that being done, we can start ahead with stitching. Guys, you'll see me here using a sewing machine. That's just to speed it along. You can just use a needle and a thread and use a normal running stitch. That will work just as well. You will also notice that this is a white fabric and I am using a black thread, and there's a reason for it. When you wear a mask, you have to ensure that the mask is not damaged, and one of the ways in which it can be damaged is one of the threads can come undone. So if it's a black thread or a thread of contrasting color, it will help you detect any flaws or any damage to the mask a lot easier. Okay. Guys, always tie your thread tails instead of back stitching. It makes it a little more secure. So now that you have the two hems sewn, we have to make the folds here in the form of an accordion to give you the classic shape of a surgical mask that we are trying to make. So here's what you do. You have to draw lines. Make sure that the hems are on the two sides of you, and then we have to draw lines at different lengths from one of the edges. So the first line will have to be at a distance of 4 centimeters from the top. Okay, so here's my 4 centimeter line, and what I do is I draw a line like so. Okay, the next line has to be at a distance of 1 centimeter. That's approximately 1 centimeter. So you draw a line again. Now you have to draw a third line, but this one again is at a distance of 2 centimeters from the previous line. Here's my 2 centimeter distance. And I draw a line again, each time making sure that my lines are parallel and perpendicular to these sides. The next line again is at 1 centimeter, and these will actually become the folds of the surgical mask. A gap of 2 centimeters again. And finally the last line 2 centimeters below that. Okay, cool. Now you have to take out your iron and basically iron out these folds so that you get that bunching effect. You basically have to fold this thing alternatively. So for the first seam or the first line, I will fold it backward on itself and then iron this. Okay. For the next line, I will fold it back straight like so. You can always do it this way. Yep, that's close enough. And then you iron it again. See how it's coming up? Okay, so the next you will have to fold it backwards like so. And then again fold it straight. So you could have seen that I basically drew 3 lines or 3 sets of lines. So that means that there will be 3 accordion type folds in this mask. Okay. This basically constitutes the front of your the filtering element of your mask. You need to hold these folds in place. So what we will do next is go ahead and put another layer of stitching so that these folds are held in place. One tip, by the way, always make sure the folds, the foot of the sewing machine don't go against the direction of the fold. So you have to sew, you have to stitch this from the other direction. Again, what you do is you tie the thread tails, but as you can see, your mask is slowly starting to take shape. Alright, we are moving along at a good pace. Now what's left for me to do is to actually sew these bias tapes which you had made previously onto the top and the bottom of the mask. Now one thing to keep in mind is you have to center this perfectly. So the way you can do that is fold your bias tape in half and put a mark at the center, and similarly you put a mask at the center, you put a mark at the center of your mask at the top. So now all I have to do is basically line these 2 marks up when I do my sewing. I'm going to place this in the middle of the bias tape and then stitch along this line, and then I'll have to actually continue the stitching for the entire length of the bias tape. So that is what I'm going to do next. And then basically what you do is you start from any corner, you fold it in half so that the raw edge is secured. Okay, now as you near this mark, this is the time when you have to put in and align the top of your other. Okay, now you don't stitch it all the way through, because remember you have to put the nasal strip which needs to be bound inside. Okay, the way you do that also is you put a center mark exactly in the middle and then you align it with the blue mark that I have over here. I think I can stitch a little bit more before I put it in. You have to be very careful that the needle does not hit the metal plate over here. I think it's a lot safer if you do it by hand, but here I'm just going to use a sewing machine. But in case you do choose to use a sewing machine, I want you to be extremely careful. So the basic structure of the mask is complete. We have done all the sewing, the nasal strip is in place, all the filters are in place, but it's still not ready to be used. Prior to it being used, it must be sterilized. You can do the sterilization in a number of ways. Some people recommend that you can wash it with soap and detergent, and that will do. Personally, I don't like using soap because the residual smell when you put it against your nose really drives me nuts, gives me headache. So I don't like that. I rather like being sterilized the old-fashioned way, that is with boiling water. So here's what I have. I have a pot of hot water. I'm still waiting for it to start boiling, and once it starts boiling, I'm going to chuck this in, keep it boiling for about 5 minutes, and then take it out and hang it to dry in a preferably in the sun, definitely in a clean place, and only then I'll be able to use it. Okay, so this mask was laid out to dry for about 4 hours yesterday afternoon, and now it's ready to be used. I keep all my masks which are sterilized in some sort of covering. I generally use kitchen wrap, kitchen towel, I'm sorry, and you can use a plastic bag, it really doesn't matter. It makes sure that you know this mask was sterilized, and it stops it from getting dirty prior to use. And now the way you use it is very simple. Before you go out of the house, you can just take it out. There's your mask. You have the nasal strip which needs to go above your nose. You mold the nasal strip so that it presses up against your nose. This is very important because you have to ensure that there's a good seal between the mask and your nose. And then you tie the strap behind your head. Like so. And there's also one more strap that you have to tie behind your neck. And that's it. That's the proper way in which you should wear a mask every time, each and every time when you leave the house. When you have to leave the house, always wear a mask. And last but not the least, when you come back in the house, always remember that this mask would most likely be contaminated. So you have to treat it with some respect. So what you do is you don't touch the front of the mask because that's where all the filtered particles would be. You remove the neck, the strap at the bottom of the neck first. Like so. And then you remove this strap at the top of your head. And then holding by the strings, you take it out. And ideally, you should immediately wash this or sterilize this in boiling hot water prior to it being used again. Again, if you store this without being sterilized, please don't let anybody else in the house prevent them from touching it, because again, it might be contaminated. So this is the last segment of this video which I wanted to talk to you about. Ever since the pandemic has begun, we have seen the usage of many kinds of masks. For example, you have the traditional industrial masks which have been used for at least many decades, so similar to the N95s, or this one performance again similar to N95 but without the valve. Now I work in the steel industry, so these things are standard issue protective gear for us. I have used these for many years and I believe in them. However, these are not the ones being recommended for use by the general public, so I don't advise you to use them. Check up with your local authorities if that's a recommendation, but from what I understand, these are not really recommended at this point for use by the general public. What is being sold at drugstores these days are two common types of masks. So this is a standard what looks like at least a surgical mask, and you have these rather DIY fancy masks which are also becoming popular. Now I have issues with both of them. Again, these are not functional issues. I am not at authority to talk about its function. I have more issues with their utility and form. Let's just put it that way. For one, they go behind your ear. It's really irritating. It shaves the back of my ear, plus it interferes with the way I wear glasses. So that's not something that I wanted. Furthermore, these are sold without any kind of packaging, so by the time it gets to me, it has been handled by a lot of people and they are not sterile by any means. So you should ideally sterilize them again, which I don't want to do for something that I have bought new from the drugstore. So and while these are somewhat industry standards in the medical profession, at least I think, these I don't trust. Maybe they work, again I don't know, but the fact that they are not standard means that I am less inclined to believe in them. Plus they come in these fancy colors and you don't know how dirty it's after use, you don't know whether it's damaged or not. So basically these were the reasons why I wanted to make my own mask. Plus these two cost about $10 each, and well, while I can certainly afford to spend $10 in this one, that again personally some people might think that's a little more that's a little expensive, and that's fine too. So yeah, put all of these reasons together, I really wanted to make my own mask, and that's what you saw me doing in this video. Hopefully you have enjoyed my content, and I will see you again in my next video. Thank you so much.